That's a pretty tough question, isn't it? Am I good enough? And David read the scriptures, so it's pretty clear. The answer to that basically is no. None of us are good enough. None of us are good enough. Um, Thankfully, God in His grace and in His goodness has done many other things for us so that we don't need to be good enough. We just need to be in Jesus Christ. And that takes care of stuff. A lot of families have that ugly secret at home. And if you were one that ever lived in a home of someone who is an addict to something or other, you know how that can be a very, very serious thing, and how life is different for you than for others. And we'll probably be sharing a couple things about that with you throughout this time today, just to touch base. In case you're here and haven't been here for a week or two, what we're doing is we're starting a series, and we're into that series about some of the things that Satan uses to grip your life and my life. And we're probably, we're going to hit a whole bunch of different stuff, different topics today. Obviously, it's going to be about addictions. And it was primarily geared around alcohol, but we're going to make it flow into other things too, because there's more than just chemical addictions that people have. We'll try to make that happen. But, you know, we're going to hit a lot of different things throughout this series, and maybe we're not going to hit your very pet sin. Maybe the thing that you're just really perfected in an imperfect way is not one of the topics we're going to hit. That doesn't mean that yours is nicer than the others, and it doesn't mean that these are the bad, ugly things and nobody else does anything as horrible as this. It just means these are some things that we see in our culture today that really has a grip that Satan uses for people. And ultimately, what we want to accomplish through these are to help people break that grip. And when you come to things like addictions, it's really, really hard. It's funny and it's not funny when the person says, oh, me with my drinking, or me with my drug use, or me with my video game use, or me with my, sexual lusting, or whatever their addiction is. I could quit that. I know I can, because I've quit it 100 times already. I mean, that is funny, but it's not funny, because it pretty much reveals that there is a problem. And living with an addict is different than living with anybody else. In fact, I'm going to suggest that maybe in our culture today, in the year 2009, in the United States of America, there's probably as many people who understand that today more than ever before. There's probably a whole lot of them that are in homes of people who are struggling with certain kinds of addictions. Millions suffer from it, often in silence. And I've learned over the years in dealing with some that sometimes it's easier to live with the pain than it is to experience change. I remember one situation I dealt with a couple decades ago, and there was one family member was extremely alcoholic, hardly ever able to function, and the other family members were pretty godly people. They were, solid godly people, and prayed for the individual all the time, and we joined in with that, and a lot of other people in the church joined in with that. And I remember talking to the godly spouse and talking about it, and I sensed from them that there was a discomfort. They wanted spiritual change. They wanted to know that their loved one would be in heaven someday because they knew Christ, but they weren't real sure that they could handle the kind of things that would happen if all of a sudden this person got straightened out. What if all of a sudden they wanted to start playing their role in the family and doing things, and everything would have been different? It was an amazing dilemma to go through at that time. Some of you, I know, go through that maybe on a daily basis. We're going to be looking at a lot of stuff, and not all of this is real pretty today. The mountain or the scene outside there, that's really pretty. I think that's just outside the back parking lot. I'm not real sure. But some of the stuff we're going to see is not good. There's a downward spiral that people, I don't think anybody ever when they were in high school or in junior high and they were filling out their career plans, said, you know, I might be a doctor, I might be a baseball player, I know, I might just be an alcoholic. That'd be fun. That would be a good thing. No one's ever woke up and said that's what they want to do. That's not their goal in life. And so obviously, how does this happen? Stuff like this happens to people, and you wonder why. And you know what? A lot of the people it happens to, good people. A lot of good people that go through these things. There's a little process, and this is real easy. If I said to you, come up with a 4-step process, you would come up with this right now on your own, but I'll give you words just so you can kind of make it fit yours. There's the experimentation part. You know, your kids are like, hey, come, you know, your friends in school are saying, hey, we're going to do this at this party. You got to come. It's going to be cool. And we're going to have drink, or we're going to have marijuana, or we're going to have something there. You got to come. It'll be a blast. We're going to have a good time, and things will be fun. And somebody goes, and it's sort of like in the old days where you go out back behind the shed and do the thing that mom and dad doesn't know going on. And there's the thrill of the rebellion, and then also of whatever the thing you're doing with. You experiment with it. And then it becomes a regular occurrence where before very long your friends are saying, hey, let's get together this weekend and let's party again this weekend and let's have fun. And before you know it, it's weekends and then special occasions like it's Labor Day, or the teacher didn't give us homework, or they served soft pretzels at lunch. I mean, any special occasion becomes a reason for this kind of use and excitement, and that becomes then a habit. It becomes that, you know what, it's, you know, I haven't done anything for 2 days, it's time to do it again. And then before very long, you know, it's going to be an addiction. It's going to take over. And the thing about the addiction is it takes you over. Now, this can happen to anyone. This process can happen to anyone. There is such a thing as some people being more susceptible. And I don't know that I want to buy that, but I really kind of do. Because I do think there are some people who maybe if they get involved and they experiment and they get to the regular occurrence, they may slide into the habit addiction thing easier than some other people. And some people find it easier to get out of the habit or even the addiction than other people. So I think there's some susceptibility. Things like, this is, you know, I don't mean this to be a racist thing, but Native Americans, for some reason, seem to struggle with alcohol. For some odd reason, they do. And so, you know, maybe there's something there, but I do not believe at all that all of the world's problems are genetic and DNA based. All the problems are based around your heart and my heart and the things that we need to take care of. The only sure way to avoid a disaster with alcohol, to avoid a disaster with any of the chemicals or any of the inappropriate addiction things is to never start. To never start. Don't take the first drink, don't take the first drag, don't take the first needle, don't take the first anything. If you don't take the first one, you're not going to become an addict. That's pretty smart, isn't it? So it is true. Many people turn to artificial means for satisfaction. This is what brings them contentment, joy, or it's an escape. They do this because I can't stand the pain anymore. I got to get rid of the pain. I want to feel better. And so to escape life, you get a bottle, you get a needle, you do whatever. Because, you know, that bottle and that needle always promises something, and it's always there. Unfortunately, it might give you that, it might fulfill that promise for a minute, for an hour, for a couple hours, but then the crash is pretty bad. Well, what exactly is an addiction? I'm just going to steal Erwin Lutzer's thought, because it's simple. And an addiction is a pathological love and trust with an object or an event. It's all of a sudden you just love this thing, and you trust it. It becomes personal to you, and it's something you need to have. You have to have it. It can be a chemical. and it could be an activity. Today we're going to really feature mostly just chemicals and talk about some of those. So the first thing we want to talk about are the physical consequences. And in this case, I brought, just for crutches for myself, I brought some stuff. Some of you know that I do, I kind of hit up some of the school's programs on chemical abuses. And as a result of that, I've been on for years, probably 15 years, on a statewide committee out of Columbus. I don't always go to the meetings. In fact, I've been really bad about going to those lately. And but they're really interesting. It's all these professional preventionists and me. And so it's always a lot of, they think I'm really, you know, it's sort of like the token toy there. I'm a lot of fun. But I get a lot of good materials. I have this one on just drugs abuse. I've got piles of this stuff if anybody really needs information. And I believe we put some things even in your bulletin today. But this is on drug abuse. This is so good. It tells you everything. And this is about a year old, so it's pretty current. But it gives you pictures, charts, and descriptions and results of everything of drug abuse and how it affects you and all that. So if you're interested in something like that, it's up here and you can see it. This other thing that I went through about, what was it, about 5, 6 years ago, I went through some special training on methamphetamines. So I'm going to show you some pictures in a couple minutes, and some of those come from the presentation that I went around different places and presented this material to them. And you're not getting the full thing. I wish I could give you the full presentation, but it's pretty good. But there's a lot of stuff in here. I was fascinated during the summer reading USA Today one day, and I don't know what day it was, but it was USA Today, and and I was reading it, and some drug prevention guy in Idaho. I mean, I thought they had potatoes. That's all I knew they had. But he learned that in their place, and I'm not going to tell you the methods, and I do know how to make this stuff, but I'm not going to tell you because I don't want anybody to learn. And so, but some guy in Idaho figured out a way to make meth, liquid meth, in smaller quantities. I mean, that's an incredible discovery, and it's one that we don't like, or at least I don't like, because it's not what we want them to be learning how to do. There are physical consequences that come. There's physical damage that comes from people who take, use, and abuse certain chemicals, whether it be tobacco, alcohol, some of the drugs-related things. Some of the minor effects, and you see these all the time, is bad breath. I was real tempted to be descriptive about what people's breath like, but that wouldn't be fair or nice. Bloodshot eyes, all those kind of little things. Some, not all, some people can come out and look picture perfect after using something, but very often they look sloppy, a little unkept. There are some major problems that can come. Alcohol, chemicals, all those things destroy brain cells, and we all have a limited number of brain cells, and some obviously have a lot more limited number than others, and I just think we're all losing them every day anyhow, so why add to that? Damage to liver, all the other organs can be impacted too. I think what's going to come up here is some pictures of a family, a real nice picture of a family. And then this is just after a short amount of time. These are going to be methamphetamine uses. And what this story was, and I won't go into everything on it, is, you know, a nice family, mom, dad, and a little girl. And mom starts using methamphetamines, gets arrested, is away. And this young girl basically has to live by herself and be raised on her own. The other pictures here are going to show you, after a certain amount of use of meth, what you can look like. Isn't that beautiful? The changes that can come. Penny was probably an okay person, but then these things begin to happen. Here's a neat young man, tries a little meth for a while, and he doesn't look quite the same, and neither does she. These are typical, very, very typical things that we're finding, and these are easy pictures to get because most people have pictures of themselves, And then when you arrest them, you get to take them and you can put them in. By the way, the police that were doing some of the training, because I was trained through police departments in Columbus, some of the police were telling us the methamphetamine users who they bring in, the police ask them everything, and those people will tell you anything you want to know. They tell you everything. They're just so uninhibited about all that kind of stuff. Well, the physical consequences are really good, but I have good news, because in the United States of America, we have a magic number. We have a magic number. The number is 21, because the midnight before you turn 21, magically, everything changes, and it's okay. It's okay. So all the other problems that might have happened the day before, like you might get sick, you might get ill, you might get diseases, you might deteriorate, you might not drive well, you might not think good, you might ruin your family. Apparently, at midnight, they all disappear. And I think it's the Budweiser fairy that comes and does that. So I don't know what it is. I'm being facetious, obviously. But nothing changes at midnight. And I used to tell my kids about dating that they had to be 38 and accompanied with a great-grandmother. And I think people should be allowed to drink when they're 98 with somebody older to chaperone them. So, that's that may be weird and all that, but I haven't been roaming around. Oh, never mind. We can tell what those people do. There are social consequences too. For one would be family things. Addictions can take the place of anything in your life. They take the place of anything. You spend time and energy supporting the habit, and it often robs those who are the closest ones to you. Now, I do believe that the addict does love their family and care about them. The problem is that they love and care for their addiction even more. And that is true. That is true. They care about that even more. A great book you can read, and I don't remember what the title of it is, that Josh Hamilton, the baseball player, tells his story. And this is a great young guy in an incredibly good family support system who goes away to play baseball, and he's like the hottest prospect ever. And they compared him to Mickey Mantle all the time. And for whatever dumb reason, he starts using hard drugs. He didn't do the smoking, the drinking to lead up to it. He just jumped into hard drugs. And I didn't mean to do friends, but that's okay. I just was excited and pushed the button. I'll put it down. And but he did that, and before long, he was totally out of everything. He ruined his life. He ruined his parents. He ruined his wife and kids. And then he got back. And you may know he's with the Texas Rangers. And a year ago, he had a phenomenal comeback year. He was a big splash at the All-Star game, and everybody was in love with Josh Hamilton. And he fell off the wagon one night this last winter. Out in between times, he just did. And anybody who's been an addict knows that is a lifelong struggle. And he had that one. As far as we know, there's only been one, and he was very upfront and honest about it, has gotten help. But it just, it affects everything. He lived away from his family. He didn't have anything to do with his parents and his wife and kids for a long time, until finally, with God's help, he got through it. And friends, it affects them. If family's left out, the friends are often left out also. However, sometimes it's the friends who helped get us into these problems. They're the ones who say, hey, come on over, we're having some drink at the party. Hey, let's do this again next weekend. And they're the ones who get you going. And this is the thing that really amazes me about kids today, how very, very, very weak, yes, I think very weak, young people are, that they can't say no to stuff, that they just can't stand on their own. And they allow themselves to get taken into this kind of stuff. And you know what I have seen, and I've seen it here in this town. I've seen kids influence other kids and get them involved in stuff that they shouldn't be involved in. And they were such good friends because I want to impress them and I want to be accepted. And then at some point they all go away. And you're stuck with your problem, but those friends are gone. And it does happen. The drinking buddies leave you. Eventually, they're going to fail you. And aloneness is one of the major consequences of addiction. Me and drink against the world. Another thing is work. If I were really doing this creatively, I would have put workforce, so there'd be another F word in there. But some people are able to do this. College students can binge drink. They can drink 16, 22 shots of something Saturday, Sunday, and be plastered and go to class on Monday and look okay. Some people can do that. Some people can drink all night long, and go to work the next morning. Some people can do that, but not everybody can. And some people find out that it impacts very seriously their work world. There are many machinists and surgeons who could use a little sobriety. Wasn't it Ford that a few years ago started putting on a sticker on the cars what day of the week it was made because you didn't want to get one that was made on Monday because the guy still had a hangover? And that's pretty sad when we get to that point. Many times this addiction impacts the workplace. They'll lose their jobs, and then they'll lose finances. That would have been another good F word, wouldn't it? Money is easier to spell. If there's an income, much of it's used to support the habit. And if not, then they're not covering anything. And then they have to use other means. And those other means generally are not legal. I remember when I was a kid and some of my friends, when we reached that age where everybody was starting to do this stuff, probably the reason I didn't get involved with them was because the way they were getting their things was they were going up to the railroad up the street. Some of you have been there, around the corner up near Burger King. They would go to that railroad and break into the boxcars. And I had broken into enough things before and got caught by police before to know that I didn't want to do that again. And so I didn't do that. And all my friends did. And some of them went, a year or two before anything bad happened to them. But eventually something bad happens. The physical, the social consequences of alcohol and drugs, tobacco, all those things, the 5 classes of controlled substances, all of that stuff for just physical, social reasons are not worth it. They're not worth it. They are not worth it. But then we come to the most important of them all, is the biblical consequences, or what God would say about stuff. Now, it is true. It is true that the Bible does not specifically state abstinence. But the teachings of the Bible certainly suggest and definitely imply that it's far better to avoid chemicals and drugs than to partner with them. Now, there are thousands and hundreds of passages that would speak that way. You'll find one that tells Timothy to take a little wine for his stomach's sake. You'll find one that says Jesus turned water into wine. I would say any water that Jesus turned into wine, I would drink. But I don't think Gallo is Jesus. And I don't think any of those others are either. And apparently, and I'm not an expert in that area, but some of the alcohol of today they make them stronger. I know the marijuana of today from my youthhood is way stronger than it was then. And so these things are, they're not to be equated. And I have a book that I put in your outline some web pages. You'll probably do better to go to the web page because I really don't think you're going to read this book because it's called The Biblical Approach to Alcohol. It's written by Stephen Reynolds. Stephen Reynolds took his Hebrew and Greek at Harvard, okay? So he really uses this in this book. Joel can read it, but most of the rest of us couldn't. So I wouldn't necessarily advise that. But the web pages are pretty interesting if you want to know a real biblical view on this. So if you're one that's deceiving yourself and saying, it must be okay because in their culture, they took it for this and that, you're missing the vast teaching of what Scripture would say on this. For instance, a couple things I have in your Bible. Jeremiah 5, it's a passage where where Jeremiah is being told by God about how unfaithful Israel was, and then God punishes them. And just like in Jeremiah 13, he's going to allow them to be filled with drunkenness, and then he's going to smash them. So God uses it even as a form of judgment in those cases. Proverbs 23 is the amazing fun passage you need to read. You need to read Proverbs 23, verses 29 and 35. It starts out, who has woe? Who is full of sorrow? Who has bloodshot eyes? And then it goes on to say, well, isn't it the person who abuses these kinds of things, the alcohol and stuff? Very, very good stuff. Reminds us that God says that these things could be dangerous. Don't do that. But there is hope available. There is hope available. Psalm 40 gives us a couple of thoughts, and I'm going to read some of that to you as soon as I get my glasses on. In Psalm 40, verses 1, 2, and 3, David says this, it waited patiently, King David, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire, and he set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. Do you notice the reality of what he's talking about? He talked about how bad it could get. Slimy pit, mud, mire. People who are mired in addictions, that's how they would feel their life is. They feel like, wow, I can relate to King David on that because I'm in a pit. And the more I dig, the deeper down I'm going instead of getting out. I can't do it. I can't do it on my own. David had a guilty conscience. And just like many of us today, he says to him, God, I need you to pick me up and to clean me off. None of us can do that on our own. None of us were ever able to overcome any of this kind of stuff. There's no sin that you can overcome. There's no sin that you can outwork and get what you need out of it, and that is forgiveness and cleanness from God. Some people need to hit the bottom. And that's different for all kinds of people. And I've seen people where I thought they were at the bottom and they weren't yet. And it's like, wow, how far down does it have to go? And yet it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. We don't always know where that bottom is. But there needs to be a genuine cry out to God. David said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he turned to me. I cried to him. He heard my cries. God hears your cries. You may feel like nothing's happening. You may think that nothing's changing. I am struggling still. This is still bigger than me. But God hears the cries. There are a lot of people and a lot of organizations that help. There's great things like Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, and there's all kinds of forms of that. They're excellent because they understand the need of the addicted person. Two things that person's looking for and needs. One is acceptance, and the other is accountability. They need both. And this is probably the reason why most of us don't like dealing with these things, because that person needs 24/7 accountability. And that can get hard and that can get messy in life, and it can change and confuse everything for us. The process of recovery is constant. It's hard, it's messy, and they fail often, and yet they need to be picked up and helped. But David said in his situation that God delivered. God delivered David. God delivers people. He still does that today, and he's able to do it. He heard my cry. And in verse 3, it says, many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. I wish that word was just a little different. I wish David used a different word than many. I wish he used the word all, but he didn't, because that's not real. Many people will cry out to God, and God will respond, and they'll get things right. Many, millions of people have overcome some of these particular problems. It's happened for them. It can happen for others still today. But not all. Not all. And whose fault is that? I don't think it's God's. I don't think it's God's downfall. There's a couple verses that I wanted to read to you elsewhere. I'll just read these to you. Paul wrote this: "Be very careful then how you live." Be very careful how you live. It is vitally, vitally, vitally important how you live your life. What you do, what you think, how you live your life. Very, very important. Not as unwise, but as wise. Some people make very unwise decisions. One of our young men was telling me he was at the store the other day and he saw a leading citizen in Rittman at the stop-and-go checkout with a bag of potato chips and a six-pack of beer. And I said to this young man, "You did warn him that potato chips are harmful to your health." Well, I think the potato chips were safer than the beer, personally. But, we need to make wise decisions, not unwise decisions. Making the most of every opportunity. Just standing at the store counter, that's an opportunity. Guess what my thoughts are of that leader who was standing there buying beer? They've gone down a couple notches. We all know that. I mean, as much as we try to justify and say, well, everybody does this and it's okay, it's socially accepted, we still don't expect certain people to do that kind of stuff. And I know certainly if I had done something, started using those kind of things, you would be disappointed. And we need to take advantage of the opportunities because the days that we live in are evil. Everybody else is evil. Why should you be? You should do something different. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Live right. Be careful. Do the right things. And then it goes on to say, do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery, but instead be filled with the Spirit. God gives you a substitute. You don't need that kind of stuff. He has a substitute for you. It's called His Holy Spirit. And God had sent Him to indwell in you and to help you and to take care of all your needs and keep you strong and keep you safe and keep you spiritual, which is more fun. I guess the one thing that people would say that I do these things because, and it might almost make some sense, is when they say, I do these things because it's fun, it feels good. Okay? I'm into fun, and I'm into feeling good. I like those things a lot. I can give you a whole lot of other ways to do that, and I think they'd be a lot more healthier. Today, there are thousands of former addicts who tell us that life can be different. Mr. Lutzer said, when we stop focusing on the strength of the sin and focus on the strength of Christ, anyone can be delivered. But that's a 24/7 constant process. We need to trust, obey, depend upon Jesus Christ for everything. Let's have a word of prayer together. Lord, I just thank you so much for the grace that you give. And even though this problem that we discussed is a big one and a real one, it's one that you are able to handle and you are able to get control of. And Lord, I just pray that you would speak to each of us. Let us live wisely. Let us realize that when we cry to you, you respond. And God, I pray that you would have victories even this day. And may your Spirit and may Jesus Christ be pleased and praised. And we ask in his name, amen.